Shalom, everybody. This is Olivier with Shalom and Messiah. Can you pass the test? Which test? Well, there's a test for Christians regarding Israel. It's known as the 3P test. Let me tell you about it. It's very important. But first, let me tell you about the 3D test. In 2003, Ukrainian refusenik Nathan Sharansky, who served as Israel's interior minister and led the Jewish agency, formulated his now famous 3D test. To date, nobody has been able to come up with a more accurate test to determine if any words or actions are anti-Semitic. Sharansky posited that if any deeds could be described as demonizing, delegitimizing, or applying double standards as they pertain to Israel, they established irrefutable proof of anti-Semitism. Friends, today, more than ever, the 3D test needs to be applied. So let me unpack this a little bit. Number one, demonizing. Going back to the closing of the biblical canon and early Christianity, we can find many examples of the demonization of Jews. It started small and moved slowly, but increased over the centuries and through the Middle Ages to come to an apex at the time of the Holocaust. At that point in history, demonization led to the dehumanization of the Jews, which required complete annihilation to solve the problem. The road to get there was extremely bumpy. Let me remind you of a few bumps. As Jews, we were accused of killing Christ, an accusation that lives on 2,000 years later. We were charged with killing Christian children to drain their blood, to make matzah for Passover. We were charged with piercing communion wafers during Holy Week to reenact the killing of Christ. Our people were accused of poisoning the wells of Europe to start the Black Plague that killed so many. Many of the church fathers, all the way to Martin Luther, and even beyond, described the Jews as instruments of Satan and demon-possessed. That's the first one, demonization. Then delegitimization. Along with the attempt at painting the Jews as demonized comes their delegitimization. Hitler tried his very best to communicate his message that Jews were not legitimate human beings, but just vermin. We were then relegated to be to subhumans, and as such, we became the prime targets for elimination. What do you do with vermin? You eliminate it. But perhaps the best example of delegitimization in recent years is the false narrative about the displaced Palestinian people, leading to the Israeli people constantly being accused of colonization, occupation, illegal land grabs. We hear the same message over and over again. The Jews don't have the right to the land of Palestine. The scary part is that this narrative is no longer questioned, but it is promoted with the hope of fully enforcing it soon enough. And it seems to be working, friends. In the words of Holocaust historian Raoul Hilberg in his book, The Destruction of the European Jews, we find a progression that you do not want to miss. Listen to this, and I quote, "The missionaries of Christianity had said, in effect, you have no right to live among us as Jews. The secular rulers who followed had proclaimed, you have no right to live among us. The German Nazis at least decreed, you have no right to live." To summarize, since the 4th century after Christ, there have been 3 anti-Jewish policies: conversion, expulsion, and annihilation. The second appeared as an alternative to the first, and the third emerged as an alternative to the second. Close quote. What a powerful statement. Number 2 is double standards. It's number 3, sorry. When it comes to double standards, the United Nations takes the prize. According to the UN Watch, within the last 9 years, 164 resolutions have been adopted against Israel and 84 against the rest of the world. That's twice as many against Israel than the rest of the planet. How is that even supposed to be fair? What about going after China, Iran, Sudan, North Korea, to name just a few? Wow, what a double standard. Amnesty International is a close second, though. They accuse Israel of genocide in what they call the occupied Gaza Strip. They published a 297-page report in which they state this report documents, and I quote, this report documents Israel's actions during its offensive on the occupied Gaza Strip from October 7, 2023. What? The Gaza Strip hasn't had Jewish ruling presence since 2005. They've been self-governed by Hamas. It is Hamas who broke the ceasefire, not Israel. The Gaza Strip is not occupied. And on October 7th, Israel did nothing. It was Hamas that invaded southern Israel and butchered 1,200 people. Incredible. To add insult to injury, the ICC, International Criminal Court, recently issued arrest warrants against Bibi Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, based on a report and request filed in May of 24 by the ICC prosecutor Karim Khan, who started by pointing the finger at 3 leaders of Hamas, all dead, and claims that they are responsible for many war crimes, rightfully so. And then, in the same breath, he continued, assuming moral equivalence when there's none. He issued arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Gallant. Many countries have immediately already agreed to arrest the 2 Israeli leaders the moment they step foot on their territory. Now, the ICC doesn't have jurisdiction to enforce what it claims, but it shows its true colors, and it's also allowing many other countries to join in this Jew hatred crusade. Now, as believers, we can easily take the 3D test and identify demonizing, delegitimizing, and double standards. But the challenge is somewhere else, especially at a time where Jewish people do not know where to turn for help. The 3D test is not the hard one. Can believer take the 3P test and pass it with flying colors? Friends, the 3P stand for pray, promote, and provide. So let me unpack that one a little bit now. Pray. Well, any Bible reading modern day follower of Yeshua, the Messiah, Jesus, will know that prayer is foundational to our relationship and walk with the Lord. Additionally, the scriptures are replete with invitations to pray for Israel, especially for the peace of Jerusalem, as we often read in Psalm 122:6, which says, "Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you." What is crucial to understand is that when we pray for peace in Israel, in Jerusalem, we pray for the coming of Yeshua, the Prince of Peace, Sar Shalom, as we read in Isaiah 9:6 and 7. The only one who will usher in and maintain absolute, true, eternal, everlasting peace in the world. When we pray for peace in the region, we are praying for the second coming of Yeshua, the return of the Messiah. In addition, we must also pray for the salvation of Israel and the Jewish people. Israel needs intercessors more than ever. Pray daily for salvation, protection, provision, and peace. Number 2, promote. What do I mean by that? Well, amid a tsunami of fake news and rewritten narratives, it becomes critical to spread the truth about Israel. Debunking the numerous lies about occupation, colonization, apartheid, forced starvation, and genocide has become the task of men and women of goodwill seeking to promote a balanced view of the Middle East. This is what I'm called to do. This is what you're called to do. Now, this might come as a surprise to many, but the occupied, listen to this, the occupied quote-unquote Gaza Strip is not occupied, and the genocidal IDF soldiers have made it possible for Gaza's population to grow. Yes, grow by 2.02% in 2024. Now, some will say that 2% is not much. Think again. Considering that all genocides are always responsible for at least the death of 25% of any people group, that is quite a number. You can find more about those numbers on jewishvirtuallibrary.org. So yes, the population of Gaza has grown. And number three is provide. Praying and promoting the truth should be an ongoing aspect of our approach to Israel. But in light of current events around the globe, we have come to the age of rescue and protection. We pray and spread the truth about Israel because we understand its importance in God's plan, as laid out in Romans chapter 11. When Amnesty International, the ICC, the United Nations, and many countries go against Israel with everything they've got, believers need to unite and prepare to provide rescue and shelter to their Jewish neighbors, friends, co-workers, and family members, and we need to do it with everything we've got. Ultimately, God will protect Israel as he promised in Psalm 121:4, and I quote, "Behold, he who keeps Israel will not slumber and will not sleep." Close quote. That said, God is constantly using people like you and me, as he will be using during the Great Tribulation, like in Matthew 25:31-46. Are you ready to provide? Whatever the cost? As we come alongside Israel, we must never forget that we are in a spiritual war, that nobody goes to war unprepared or unprotected. Ephesians 6:12 tells us, and I quote, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places." Close quote. Friends, listen. Satan is very prepared and equipped, and yet he has also already been defeated by Yeshua. But his anger and disdain for the chosen people of God is real. Satan wants to hurt God, so he will hurt the apple of his eye, the chosen people, the Jewish people, as Zechariah 2:8 reminds us. But be encouraged. Friends, be encouraged, because Zechariah also comforts us by stating in 8:2, "Thus says Yahweh of hosts, I am jealous with great jealousy for Zion, and with great wrath I am jealous for her." Close quote. Be ready to identify the enemies of Israel and of the Jews by applying the 3D test. But more importantly, be ready to be challenged through the 3P test. Very, very few Christians are passing this test. Please be one of those who do. Thank you, and be blessed.